how have you been? How was your week? How was your day, your life, your month? What is it, September 13th?
Yes, you all. It is September 13th. I have been in the sky. As many of you know, I'm a flight attendant, so I've been very busy, but for good reason. I'm a traveler and I have a few things I'm trying to get to as far as goals, so I'm super excited. Yeah. How about
I guess it's been like really good. I've been very busy keeping myself situated. I just got back into working out, trying to snatch back, you know what I'm saying, so I could have a fruitful fall. Okay, guys. Hashtag, you know, um, I'm gonna give Hot Girl Summer a run for its money, and do the hashtag of fruitful fall, where we are sinking into just a healthy lifestyle, eating right, exercising, um, having that mental clarity, taking that time to unplug and unwind. So that's kind of what I've been doing. Just a fruitful fall, just planting all of these seeds so that um, it may sprout in the next season.
your mom?
Yes. Oh, we have my amazing friend Key who just joined the live. I love her so much. She's so amazing. And so, beloved, introduce our topic. So, what are we talking about today? This is episode 5, y'all. So, for 5 strong episodes,
Woo!
y'all have been with us and we appreciate you. Um, so, yes, introduce us and what we're going to be talking about today.
Today we're going to be talking about single women and the decline of their desire. There's actually a statistic out there basically stating that there are more people or less people getting in relationships, more people deciding to either have each other or to just stay single. So today we're just going to break down what are some of the reasons that may be so, and from a bit why being in a relationship and being married and in those different type of covenants are so important to our generation.
So yeah, so the title is Desiring Marriage as a Single Woman. Has it become a taboo, especially looking into the from a Christianity lens? So the women who are strong in faith and their position with the desire to marry. So do you want to start off with reading that statistic that you found?
Yes, absolutely. So what we found, it is our speech and debate background. We always have to cite our sources, as my coach used to say. According to pewresearch.org, it states that as relationships, living arrangements, and family life continues to evolve for American adults, a rising share are not living with a romantic partner. A new Pew Research Center analysis of census data finds that in 2019, roughly 4 out of 10 adults aged 25 to 54 were unpartnered. That is neither married nor living with a partner. This share is up sharply from 29% in the 1990s. Men are now more likely than women to be unpartnered, which was not the case 30 years ago.
Yes, and so that is profound. So we're looking from 1990 to 2019, and there's been a lot of shifts in that paradigm. And I know one for instance that we'll talk a little bit more later into the podcast is the shift. I think is a result of economic success, and we'll dive a little bit more into that. And so the first question is thinking about these statistics and honing into our topic, desiring marriage as a single woman. The first question, and I'll ask this question to you, is the desire to marry correlated with the lack of faith or biblical morals, traditional morals, society morals? Do you think that looking at these statistics where now 38% of people in the United States are unmarried, do you think that that desire is correlated with any of these other pretenses, such as biblical morals or traditional views or societal views.
Absolutely. I think if we look in the past, there was a sense of community when it came to life, to just everyday life, right? So it wasn't just about, hey, this is my life. I want to be single or not. It was literally like a habit that was passed down from generation to generation. So when it came to our generation, now we're looking at being in a relationship as something that you pick up off the grocery store, like some Cheez-Its. And it's like these decisions that we're making when it comes to relationships are dire, not only to our society, but to who we believe, because of a lack of morale or traditions, whether that be in you being a Christian or different other. There is more people that are deciding to remove themselves from the attachment of having to be in a long-term commitment relationship because they think that they need to. And some people are trying to run away from what the culture says or tradition says. Hey, get married, have kids, because it's like, hey, we're in a generation, new times, it's 2023, but at the point where how far is too far when it comes to evolving with the way that our society runs. I think most definitely our society, especially Western society, that being in a relationship is kind of something that you can put to the side, right? If I want to have children now, there's technology out there where I can do in vitro and I can freeze my eggs. And now men are saying, hey, I have money, so if I become successful, because there's a lot more avenues now to be successful. Hey, well, if I get all this money, I can find a young, beautiful woman when I'm in my 40s and 50s and make it and still live the life I would want to live, rather than focusing on being when I'm in my early 20s per se. So people's perspectives of that, I think, are very interesting, but I think there should be attention on the long-term effects of those decisions our culture is making.
Absolutely. And so kind of tying it back to biblical sense. And so I was reading the book of Genesis. So Genesis chapter 2, verse 18 actually says, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper as his partner." And so just the definition and the design of marriage was God's design. So if we're looking at it from a biblical standpoint, why are so many people not taking this covenant of marriage seriously? Why has it become so commercialized? And it's because really society has taken something that was God's design and they've warped it into their own design. And now that's when we have these pillars of why marriage is not happening. We see that men are saying that they don't want to get married because it's a financial burden. You know, marriage is going to lead to divorce and the wife is going to take half. You see women saying that, you know, they don't want to get married because it's also a burden, but it's more so of an emotional burden. You know, it's like he'll just leave once he gets tired and do this, or there's just like a lack of trust in the relationship realm. So we're allowing all of these societal external factors to kind of enter the mix of what God originally designed it to be. And I think that's why marriage is the leading cause of divorce. You know, like 50% of people who get married, 50% of marriages end in divorce. And I honestly say it is because, you know, we have come in, the world have come in, and they put their 2 cents into what marriage is. You know, they put their 2 cents into it being something where it's a financial agreement. It's a prenuptial, prenups are left and right. There are some people who are getting married and knowing that it might lead in divorce, and they're like, you know what, I'll just get remarried. So just that whole ideology of what marriage is, a lot of people are getting into it and they don't even understand it. They don't understand where it started, where it came from, and what it actually means. And so our society is going to continue to be in this tug of war with what marriage is and what it can be, because the at the lowest level, they do not understand that it's God's design. And God outlined the principles to the design, gave the marching orders, the steps, created the systems for this design, but people don't know God. They don't know God's design, and their marriages are becoming irrefutable and leading to its own demise because they didn't have God in the center of it from the beginning.
Absolutely.
So I think so that's how I could kind of see, that's where I would see the correlation or the lack thereof from that standpoint. And do you have anything that you want to add to that before we move into our next question?
Absolutely. I was just watching a video this morning, and a young woman was speaking about just the disparity between even young Christian women who are traditionally known to get married or have the will to get married a lot younger are now having issues, and they aren't getting married in their early 30s, mid 30s, because now there is this lie, there's this just this plenty of fish type society when it comes to partners. Have all these options. Now there are Christian dating apps telling you, like, look at all of these people that could possibly be the person for you. So now people are relying on their own senses. They're putting love in their own hands. And as you mentioned, Lovely, like God created love, God created marriage within his design. So when we try to recreate it and try to take control of something that is truly in his hands, it really makes the dating process using, because no longer are people using discernment when it comes to dating. They're not using things like looking at the spirit when it comes to people. They're looking at a picture that they may find attractive and someone who claims Christianity, and just if we take it outside of that, people are just looking at things face value. So I think it definitely, the dating realm is rubbled. So a lot of people are walking away from it because they aren't finding success in that route.
Amen. I hear that. And then so the next question says, how can we bring the ideals of marriage back to women, not as solely a design, but a need? So looking at our women, putting our women in the hot seat. We'll talk about the men in a minute. But what are we seeing? Like, what are the trends that we're seeing in regards to the ideals of marriage as it relates to Black women? Because I know we see a lot in society, independent Black women, and people love to hop on that train and just go at it with a hammer. Whenever they mention independent Black women, the world goes crazy. Is that merited? Let's just break that down first. The ideas of Black women in correlation with marriage, and then we'll look at women as a whole.
Okay. So that's an amazing point that you bring up, Lovely. As we already know, there's a lot of stigmas that being a Black woman already. And as we mentioned, there was a statistic that she'll state later on when it comes that Black women are one of the most educated groups in Western society. And it's how, due to that educational kind of drift comparable to the Black men in society, there is an unequivocal difference, unfortunately. So now some Black women are going to society not only with some of the stigmas that are on their back, but being sometimes overqualified in certain areas that they may think would be seen as a relationship. So if I have a master's degree in something and I meet a man who barely got his high school degree, I may automatically balance him out as an option for myself. So I feel because these different disparities, it is harder for Black women, because now we have a society where Black women are no longer looking at the true qualities that are necessary within a relationship. And it goes back to what you were saying, Lovely. God has designed marriage. There are certain qualities that you need. As for a woman, you need to be submissive and you need to be a position to lead. But now we have a society that's saying, no, we can swap those roles. Women can do what men can do. Men can do what women can do. And now we're basically pushing forward towards a society that's confused, because now when a woman gets into a relationship, it's not working when she's with her man. It's harder for her to even stay attached or committed in a long-term relationships if her ideal is, because of my achievements, because of the things that I've done in my life, overqualifies me to actually be someone that follows a man in a relationship. So it is becoming harder, and we have a lot of groups that we see in society today. Some people would call them feminists, that are literally no longer looking for equality. They're looking to be open, and that just kind of roots back to, if we look at the beginning, some would say an Adam and Eve, or Adam and Eve. Eve took the liberty to speak to the serpent, and the serpent guided her to eat of this fruit, and she convinced Adam to do the same. But if you look in Genesis, it clearly, after she committed that sin, it basically said one of the consequences that Eve or women have is now that they will always seek the power of their husband. Women will always seek to have a sense of authority in their relationship, and they will battle with that submissiveness. But with a society that now does not have morals, does not have a grounding in what I believe the word of Christ, that none of that stuff matters to them. They feel that, no, that God, whatever God had to say, boo-hoo, all right, I'm gonna take my throne, I'm gonna get my crown, you follow my rules. And we can see we have broken homes, we have a lot of single mothers, a lot of single fathers, and I think unfortunately that has affected the Black woman when it comes to some of those consequences the most.
Yeah, and I feel like you hit a lot of points, and you hit the ground running with them. And I would have to say I kind of look at it differently when we're looking at Black women and their ideals of marriage. I look at other factors, and I don't always group everyone into one bottle or one category, because I understand that there are circumstantial reasoning behind all types of demographics. And then, but just kind of honing in on Black women in general in regards to marriage, the first kind of demographic that I dissect are the Black women who are educated. And the stigma that's associated with them is that, you know, you're educated, you're making money, you're financially independent. And then so now, unfortunately, this specific group of women who are now, you know, in their 25s to early 30s and onward until the age of like 45 to 50, they're deemed as the 1% of women, the ones who are able to afford a lifestyle that is equitable to them. And so people view them, the spouse, their potential mates, kind of view them as, you know, less wanted, not by some, not by all. If the man is like a strong-willed man who also is handling his business, they see that demographic of strong women, and they are not polarized by it. You know, they're not taken aback by it, and they embrace them. But something that I feel like we often attack strong, Black, independent, educated, financially free women, but we never take that pause to ask, why are they so strong? Why are they financially free? It's like it was a defense mechanism, because yes, from a biblical standpoint, the man is the provider. If there is no man to provide, should the woman just lay down and be like, I have no one to submit to, I'm just gonna die? So it's like they are forced to now become independent, but that's okay. It's okay to be independent. I think the issue that is holding us back, because I put myself in this Black independent woman, financially free, et cetera, but I would never say I don't need no man, because I understand my purpose and I understand my spouse's purpose, and we walk in that purpose every single day. women need to understand their purpose and they need to walk in their purpose. And Genesis 2 verse 18 that I talked about earlier, God, in looking back at marriage being God's design, it's literally written that says, and he says, I will make him a helper as his partner. So when he designed the woman, it was to be a helper, but more importantly, a partner. If you're a partner with somebody in a business deal, both of your names are on the building. You know, it's him and her. And then more also, we know that Eve was made from the rib of Adam. The rib is right next to you. It's not in the back of you. It's not in the front of you. It's right beside you. A partner is right beside you. So there is a that equal presence that is set, but a lot of people get lost in that because they're like, well, the wife needs to be submissive, and they see that as a weakness. And I think independent women hear that and they hear it as a weakness, but it's a strength because you are now giving that person your submission, because you could choose to not give him your submission, you know. So I think like we really need to define when we're talking about these things on that deeper level instead of on the surface level, because marriage, when we're looking at it from any standpoint, it is two people who are agreeing to go into a covenant and understanding that it's God's covenant. It is God's design, and he needs to be in the center of it at all times. But we are too frequent to allow external society ideals to blur the lines of what God designed marriage to be. And so and I think like looking at marriage ideals as a whole for all women who are still single, it's not their fault. And a lot of women have standards. And I say, you stay strong near your standards. If your standards is that you need a man who is going to be a provider, that doesn't necessarily mean he has to be a millionaire, but he has to be able to provide. And providing just can mean a lot of different things. But, you know, we have to understand at the end of the day, our alignment. Where do we align? And staying true to that alignment. Yes.
Definitely heard. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think going back to the statistic that Beloved was talking about is we found that Black women, in comparison to Black men, hold 44% of degrees in the males, rounding about 34% of post-educational degrees. And then so this created the conversation of economic freedom from a male versus a woman. And the fact that Black women, by factual evidence, are making money. It's not like it was centuries ago, 100 years ago, where the woman had to depend solely on the male's income. They now have the liberty to fend for themselves and create a lifestyle for themselves. And that is kind of leading to their demise in a really weird way, because they're so empowered that that men, for some strange reason, are like, well, what do I offer? And it's like, you still offer a lot, but you and that woman, y'all need to have that conversation to understand, again, where do you align? What are you bringing to the table? And mutually agree and move forward. Yes. Okay. So did you have anything to add, or do you want me to move on to the next question?
Yeah, no, I would just add, yeah, like the importance of actually realizing or knowing the definitions of some of these terms, like she mentioned, and submissive, which is a big word that a lot of people get confused. But I think a lot of what submissiveness has to do with is trust, right? Because when you're in that position, you have a partner where you have a male, you have to trust them or give them the space. So when you may have all these skills and all these things that you offer, being able to still trust someone who's higher than you to make the best decision possible, which I feel like nowadays sometimes have two minds that are just banging against each other. And at what point, who's going to be the person that lowers themselves, who says, okay, I submit? And obviously submissiveness or submitting goes both ways as well. So, but that's a beautiful thing that you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will definitely say, when we're talking about submission in a marriage, something, and that's the other thing. A lot of people, there's not a workshop or like classes that you can take to prepare you for marriage. And I will also say that marriage and dating are night and day. Um, Dating really does start to give you those foundations, but when you are married, it's a whole different ball game. And so to that point of submission, it does happen on both ends. Like in my marriage, my husband, he's the head of the household. You know, he leads, but there's some weak points that he has, and there's some weak points that I have. And then there's some parts of my marriage where I'm leading an initiative, and there's other parts where he's leading an initiative. But what is important to note in the marriage is that at the end of the day, two people have to come together in agreement and move forward. So you could definitely be like, hey, I'm gonna go and do this really crazy thing on my own. You could either shut up or put up, and if they don't put up, then that's where you start seeing that separation, that segueing away from each other, and that's not what you need. So like I feel like a good leader um, knows their people. A good husband knows their wife, and at the end of the day, they will make the decision that is best for the unit, the family as a whole. And it's in that term submission, it becomes less of a hold on, what do you mean submit? Because you're trusting in what is being led. And so that's like a lot to divulge, but I know a lot of women, as soon as they hear, oh, you know, Proverbs 31 woman, I want to be that, I want to be that. But then it's like, whoa, submission. And it's like submission, it's a power. It's a power. And you when you give it away, you honestly, you trust who you're giving it to. So let's go on to the next question, because we could talk about submission all day and flip it up, turn it around. We unpack it as many times as we possibly can. But this next question is really good. And it says, what are some possible core wounds that of why many women are distancing themselves from the marital commitment?
That's a great question. I think a lot of the issues are, let's just say, a good portion of them happen in adolescence, right? We have a lot of children who grow up in broken homes, right? They may have started off with two parents, or divorce, and that creates that core wound where now they're no longer living that thing that they may have desired for themselves. So I don't know if any of you all watch reality shows. I'm a big reality junkie. I've been watching Love is Blind. I don't know if you guys seen the last season, but it's so awesome to see them kind of get into their stories of love and when they grew up, what their experience was. And there's one couple in there where young man came up in a two-parent home. Everything was, you know, butterflies and sunshine, and the other woman came from a broken home. And for her, it literally took a million baby steps for her even to get to the core of love and opening herself up to that idea. So I know a lot of people tend to demonize people like, oh, traumatized, you've been through all this trauma. But it's like some of these things are these issues that people hold when it comes to love is something that's bigger than maybe they intentionally did, got in a relationship with the wrong person. You know, it could be a lot deeper than that. But also to add on to a personal responsibility when we look at relationships these days, when it comes to are those core wounds, some people when they were young, they got in relationships that were unhealthy. And when you kind of fantasize love, when you don't really see love biblically, as I believe, you can find that person that you feel makes that picture happen. And it might be something that turns into the exact opposite. It could be traumatic or abuse. So now when this person has embarked in this first opportunity for love and it's failed, that is going to be a fear that can hold them back from actually trying again full-heartedly in a lot of relationships. So there's a lot of distrust and fear that comes in making the wrong decision with that first person that you decide to make that leap with in love. So I think a lot of people are red flagging everyone, like, oh, red flags, red flags, red flags. Well, a lot of us have gone through situations that were red flags ourselves. It wasn't us that made them. It just so happened that whatever that situation was or that person, it was a part of us, and those red flags were something we familiar and may end up accidentally enacting. So I think those are a few reasons why some people may have a lot of core wounds when it comes to relationships, and then at that point embarking in something that's so long-term as marriage.
Yes, absolutely. And you're really right. And some of those things that you said, they were what I was going to say as well. But I think also some other wounds that we're seeing are just kind of what's in the media. Like, we are constantly seeing one person get married, 30 days later they're divorced. Another person get married, and while they're walking down the aisle, they're thinking about, what if I get divorced? Like, divorce is just on the table. It's now on the table. And, kind of human beings, if we have an option in front of us from the beginning of it, it's always kind of, it's there in the back of our mind. But imagine if we were going into marriage thinking, this is a commitment for a lifetime. And before I even dive into this commitment, I'm going to do the work. During my dating process, I'm going to be intentional about it. I'm going to meet a person who aligns with what I believe. And the next year, we're going to talk about all the serious things. We're going to talk about religion. We're going to talk about finances. We're going to talk about family. Because even though, he may want children, now women, not all women are able to bear children. There are some people who struggle in that realm. Not all women want children. And so it's like having those major conversations during the early stages or the foundation building stages of your relationship, called dating, are imperative. And so what we're seeing are, when those conversations are not happening, you're one into marriage, hey, let's have a baby. And then the guy's like, oh, I don't want children. Or the woman is like, I can't have children, and it now becomes an issue that leads to their demise. So like, now they're entering this holy covenant called marriage, but they do not understand it from a holy covenant perspective. They understand it from a societal perspective. This disagreement, this misalignment, they're like, well, we got married, we're missing line, divorce is still on the table, we're gonna have to circle that and roll out. But it's like understanding that marriage is not a feeling like love, and it's more than that, because having a feeling of love is good. That is, you need that in a marriage, that I love my spouse. But feelings are fleeting. They could leave. So tomorrow you could wake up and your spouse has a broken leg and a missing arm, and you're like, I don't really love him that much anymore. But what I think is important is commitment, being able to be committed to your marriage. So once you have commitment, that's a whole other realm. You're not looking at things from a visual standpoint. You're looking at something from a moral standpoint at that point. Like, I am committed to this ideal of marriage. I'm committed to this design, this biblical design of marriage. And the feeling can be gone, but the commitment is there forever. I've made the commitment. So now that I've made commitment to be married to you, I don't see divorce on the table the moment that you fall out of love. Because people fall out of love all the time. I hope you don't fall on your face, But it happens. You know what I'm saying? If you're trying to be married for 60 years, you're gonna become droopy. Things gonna start failing. You know, you're not gonna be the same spring chicken that you were 60 years ago. So we have to be able to lean into the commitment, the why. Why did we do this in the beginning? And also again with that alignment, who's in the center of it all? And but I'm not. But I'm saying though, because in the event that there is circumstances that you need to divorce that person, like if they are trying to kill you, I am in no way, shape, or form advocating for you to stay with a killer or a serial killer or any of that. John Dahmer or whatever that Dahmer man name is, if he's trying to cut you up or if she's trying to cut you up and put you in a freezer, I, on record, am not advocating for you to stay in that. But I also feel that is to my initial point of that beginning stage. In the beginning stages, year one, was he trying to cut you up? Was she trying to cut you up and put you in the freezer? Y'all need to iron that out. You know, you can't just meet somebody day one and then, yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer, thank you. Don't stay with Jeffrey Dahmer. If he try to, or Jeffrey Dahmer, if she try to cut you up, he try to cut you. Need to get out of that. But a lot of people don't understand. Like when you are dating in relationships, that's the trial marriage in many ways, you know. But no, Calvin, not for better or worse. When they're trying to kill you, God does not want harm to come onto you. Like if this man is running at you with a machete, please understand that at least get out of the relationship. Lord, please just get out of the relationship. Go to the church home for a little while and just be separated. If you don't want to file the divorce papers, just be separated, you know? So, but we are going off on a tangent here. Long story short, stay away from the Jeffrey Dahmers of society when you are dating or marrying people, because don't nobody want to end up in the freezer. That is the takeaway. So yeah, that's what I would definitely have to say in regards to finding that alignment right there. And so with our next question, you ready for the next question, or you got something to add to that? I can't hear you.
No, I'm ready.
Okay, so the next question, and I think we covered this a little bit. Why are women marrying later in life?
Whew. So amazing question. I've been watching a lot of videos. I like to see people's personal take on different situations on why, because like you always say, like you don't like to box situations in, like this is very much a personal reason. And there was one young lady, she was saying she's a Christian woman and she feels that what she's looking for is not around her, right? And I think a lot of people, there's a term that they have, it's called, I don't know the exact term, but it's basically called when you're not in the right place to meet the type of people that you want to meet, there is a chance that you may not find that partner for you, right? So let's just say you're in Missouri and you're in a town that only has 100 people in it and you're looking to get married and half those people are over the age of 50 and you're 20 years old. There are certain situations, if you're not putting yourself in that place to meet people that are those people who are compatible with you, it's going to be harder to find a person. So a lot of people are dealing with that. And on top of that, dealing with people that are aligned to their values, right? Because nowadays we have a lot of people who are kind of taking values and writing it as they go. And I can take that from personal experience. You know, sometimes I ask people, what do you believe? And it the stars, the galaxies, UFO, like it just, so when you are grounded in something, especially biblical, and you're in a society where people just kind of pick and choose what they believe, it can be harder to find that specific person that you need to be aligned with. And as Lovely stated, when you're in the dating course, you're asking very specific questions, right? So I think nowadays, especially young people, they're not getting to those core questions when it comes to relationships, to the point where now they're waiting, or they're in relationships that are worth nothing, and they don't find out until they're 30, 40 years old that it's not the thing, or it's not the relationship for them. Or they are just so over it, or just dating at all, they just totally throw in the bag, and they're like, you know what, I'm gonna do this by myself. I'm gonna get me, as some people like to say, a couple cats, maybe a dog, and live my life, become financially free, and just go from there, because that seems like the better option than living a life where you're just constantly dating and getting disappointed over and over again. So I think a lot of people, or especially a lot of young women, are, as you even mentioned, are also being a consumer of media, right? There is a lot of news podcasts out there telling women what dating is like. They're saying, hey, dating is terrible these days. People are like this, men are like this, women are like this. Women only want men for their money. Men only want women for their beauty. So now there's women literally taking in this information, dissecting that information based off themselves. And then some of them are even unqualifying themselves to be in a relationship. Because I remember there's a podcast, some of you guys in the comments might know, Fresh and Fit. They say, hey, if you don't look like this, if you don't walk like this, just call it a night at this point. You and Jesus are just about to do life together at this point. And it's like a lot of women just feel like the thing that they may desire does not exist. So those are just a few, but obviously there's many, many more.
Is Fresh and Fit a Christian podcast, or are they just random people who are saying that if you're not fit and pretty, no one will marry you?
Yeah, they were just a very popular podcast that came, but they actually just got canceled on YouTube, which is crazy.
Oh.
but yeah, different women and people of all different perspectives. But of course, since it was their podcast, they would kind of demonize anybody who had a view that was opposite of theirs. But yeah, but some women and men really thought what they were saying was fact.
And I bet you the women and men who are agreeing that your physical appearance alone is what marriage or relationship is about, I'm pretty sure they're single, because relationships and marriage are not that vain. You know, it is not skin deep, or I mean, it's not surface level. There's no way that someone could, well, obviously there is a way, because they did say it out loud and stood behind it, like, oh, if you're ugly, you won't get married. And I'm like, well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So that whole, okay, yeah. So yes, back to the question, in regards to why are women marrying later in life, I would say that's not their choice. I don't think women are waiting until they're 30 to be like, okay, I'm ready to get married now. I think it's definitely circumstantial. Like, they aren't getting married right now because, you know, one, economic, like the economy. They are able to go to school. They are able to get jobs. They are able to provide for themselves and grind for themselves. And so automatically, you decide to go to school for 4 years, come out 21, 24 years old, and then you are now, after you're done with school, you're like, okay, well, let me focus in on the dating world. So now you're 24 going into the dating world. It takes you like at least 2 years to get married. So now you're getting married at 26. So it's like life is happening. So women are this age of marrying at 18, right after high school, where again, 100 years ago, that's what women had. Like, congratulations, you were able to go to high school. You accomplished something great. Now become a wife. Like, that's your next level. But that's no longer the trajectory for women now. You have access to higher education, post-education opportunities. And I think that does, in many ways, affect the fact that now you're not seeing women get married between the ages of 18 to 20 years old. You're seeing them a little bit later down the line. And then I'm gonna also say, I feel like another reason is because they offer too much. It's like, I don't even know how to say it. Like, they are bringing a lot to the table. And so when you're able to come to the table with substance, then you now have leeway. You can now say, hey, I'm not going to accept you cheating on me throughout this whole relationship if you're bringing home the bacon. You know, you're able to set boundaries. And, you know, when you're going on these dates and you're identifying that that clear boundary that you set is not something that your mate want to adhere to, that's when I have to start this process over again, make myself vulnerable again, and find this next person, because you know, that's just kind of part of the cycle. So and then another thing is, like, social media is so prominent now. So like back in the day, our boyfriends and our husbands didn't have social media. We couldn't see that he was liking all of his coworkers' pictures on Facebook, because he would just go into the office and be in the break room with Becky and flirting it up and chatting it up all day long. Then he would come home and that'd be the end of that. But now, you know, somebody snaps a picture of it, it's on social media, the drama begins and the cycle continues, and you're like, well, then there's so much more exposure, you know? And so I think the times are so much different now that it has not only convoluted this ideal of relationships and marriage, but it's given a lot of people an area to be like, hey, I'm gonna completely analyze you. If you don't check these boxes, I gotta go on to the next one. And then when they go back onto the next one, they have a pool. They got dating apps, you know, swipe left, swipe right, match or don't match. And it's like, it's just so commercialized right now that people are like, well, I don't have to deal with any of this. And then it's like funny fact that back in the day, like 50% of relationships were established through a family friend. And those relationships ended up being like long-term relationships that led to marriage, because it was an introduction from a family friend, an introduction from a parent, but there was already an established line of a connection or a relationship. And then like, hey, you should meet so-and-so. And then that flourished. So that idea of it being more personable was very relatable and succeeded. But now we have a social media app. Don't nobody know anybody. So that's why it's more prominent to be like, oh, you're going on this date with this random person. Let me run a background check to make sure that he is not like a serial killer or something, you know? So it's like, we won't dive more into dating. We won't dive back into that we talked about earlier, but just like, you know, it's so, it's just so oversaturated right now, this dating pool, when you get into it. And back in the day, I would have to say that it was simplified, and simple is good. People love simplicity. So I would have to say that, for one, like, yeah, women, I don't think women are just like saying in unison, I'm not marrying nobody until I'm 30. They're like, well, there are just some underlying circumstances that keeps on pushing this timeline back. And now that's why now an average age that we're seeing that women are getting married now is 28 to 29 years old. And so circumstances, man, circumstances. And I think it makes it even harder for Christian women and women who do have these morals and ideals to date, because it's like, off the bat, if you're like, I don't love Jesus, it's like, well, what can the Christian woman do? It's like, well, I want a man who has a relationship with God. So if you don't got that relationship with God, then we can't go on a second date, because it's imperative that you have that established. And then so right off the bat, because, you know, Christianity is just, I'm afraid sometimes to be like, God bless you, because I don't want somebody trying to stone me, like throw rocks at me because I said God bless you. So I just say, oh, you sneezed? You all right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, everything okay? You know, so you can't even say God bless you because you don't want them to be like, oh, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist, and then go crazy on you, because that's the world that we're living in. You know, it's a target on your back to believe in God in a way. So yes, that's what I had to say about that. You have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think you kind of hit all like the major points on the head. Actually, one small thing. Um, I think another thing is women, they're kind of getting demonized as well, that once they age, that they're no longer the batch of the, like the litter of the batch, right? It's like, oh, there's someone that's younger than you and stronger and requirements and are easier to be in a relationship. So now women are also walking into this mentality where some of them feel like they need to rush it. Like, I remember, long story short, I met a Christian woman. She was 28 years old. She told God, by my 29th birthday, because she saved herself for marriage, she was like, God, if you do not bring this man into my life, I'm having sex. Because at this point, I've been waiting this long to get meet this one. Like, I cannot wait any longer. Long story short, that man of God did not show up in her life, and she did exactly what she said she was going to do. She ends up getting in a relationship with a man that actually ended up being very toxic, as she described, and ended up taking her virginity and leaving. And that has just left another scar on top of the fact that now she's now in her 30s and still, you know, obviously still thriving and still living her life independently, but with that desire to still, you know, be married, but at an age where society says, hey, you ain't got it. But God says, in my timing, you know, especially for Christian women, it's like you're waiting on God, but society's like, if you're not married by 21, 22, you did something wrong. It was your fault, you know? So I think I would just encourage any women who aren't in a relationship just yet to really lean on God, because society will say, oh, because you're 29, maybe you're the problem, you're not in a relationship, or it's your fault. And in reality, if you're truly operating on God's timing and in obedience, your life will definitely lead the way it needs to be led, and you don't have to walk in a fear of not having that partner.
That's good. And that's a great segue into our last question. How can a Christian single person remain steadfast in a society that no longer honors traditional dating and marriage ideals? How can we empower these young people and middle-aged people, um, these people who want to get into relationships, healthy relationships, remain steadfast in a society
Ooh.
that no longer honors morals?
That's an amazing question, and I think that is a great question for me in my position, because a lot of people, they're still curious, like, how are you not out here wilding and in these streets and just being crazy? I think being a young person and living in Christ and operating in a way where there's joy on your face, like you're operating in the goodness of God, and people are like, how do you do that? And you don't have to do all of these side things. Like, how do you operate? How do you still have a faith and a hope in dating when you are literally the 1%? You're looking for a guy that's even smaller than if you were just looking to marry a guy, you know, who just wanted to get married. And for me, I'm like, I am truly in this time trying to make use of my time, right? Like, I'm in my church, I'm volunteering, I'm doing different things in my life that give glory to God, so I don't have to feel this lack in my life. And I'll never forget it. 2 years ago, I read a book. It's called Sacred Singleness, and the key point of this book was that God could bring that amazing partner in your life, the person that you sleep at night, you're like, man, you can look at his brown eyes, her brown hair, you can envision them perfectly, and you think this is the perfect partner. If you got them, it still would be enough. You would not be fulfilled. It could be the most beautiful woman and man in your life. You would not be fulfilled. And that hit me so hard, because it's like only God can fulfill that internal thing inside of you. And he did that before marriage. So yes, you can have the desire of marriage, but at the same time, God can still do exactly what he needs to do in your life while single. So I think operating in a joy in the process and patience and making use of that singleness that you have in your life, it could be the best time of your life. And I'm having a great time. I'm like, thank you, God, because God has given me so many opportunities in my singleness where, of course, I have moments where like that desire comes up, but at the same time, I'm like, God is literally giving me an opportunity to walk in his purpose and me to touch people's lives. And I don't have to feel like I'm waiting on someone, because at the end of the day, I'm waiting on God, and he is the all be all to my journey. So
Amen. Amen.
Thank you all so much for watching, and we hope to see you again soon. Please subscribe.